heard the phrase, kindergarten is the new second grade? It's like popping up everywhere. And parents are starting to feel the pressure. I've begun to see conversation where parents are sharing their frustrations and just the idea that their child needs to be reading super young. So in today's episode, we're going to dive into this topic, dig deeper, and really find out what's going on with kindergarten and is it the new second grade? Hi, I'm Dr. Deanna, homeschool mom, doctor of curriculum and instruction, and former K-3 teacher for over 20 years. And today we're diving deep into this phrase, kindergarten is the new second grade. I have something so exciting to share with my learning community. This upcoming Friday, August 29th, I will be releasing the first of my play-along episodes. This series is going to allow children to use the sets from my TPT storefront where you can download them and just print, cut, and go. And this allows children to play right along with me. It's a unique opportunity for children to participate in the learning as they watch. As always, I keep the episodes short and sweet because I am a firm believer in following technology guidelines and doing what's best for learning littles. I hope you'll join me on August 29th. And as a special offer to my learning community, until September 2nd, I will be having these for sale for just $1. Yes. We'll sort them together and have tons of fun. So today we're diving deeper into where this phrase has come from, what the research says, and what parents can do to support their children and what they need to know. It turns out slower might be faster in the long run. Over the last 2 to 3 decades, kindergarten has changed substantially. It used to be more play-based and about exploration and learning social skills and how to function in a classroom setting. However, even 20 years ago, we were seeing rumblings of this, especially in schools that were feeling the pressure to achieve high expectations that dealt with situations that were very, very difficult. My first teaching job was in a community that had high levels of poverty and it had a lot of socioeconomic issues that really contributed to challenges for families. A lot of families were working 2-3 jobs or more just to put, food on the table for their kids. And so very early on in my career, I learned, but at the same time, these schools were feeling immense pressure. And I myself was part of a pilot program where we piloted a full day kindergarten. And I remember being so excited because I thought, all right, my first year teaching, I had done a kindergarten half-day program, and I thought, I'm going to have time for all of those standards, plus we're going to have time for that exploration and that language development that these kids super need. And I was basically told, no, all that time is going to be spent on academics. So is this a relatively new phenomenon? Not completely. 20 years later, I can definitely attest to the fact, and actually it's been more than 20 years, but I can attest to that it's become more and more the norm. What used to be a place for developing foundational skills for learning has really morphed into what honestly looks a lot more like what first grade and second grade used to be. And this is true just looking at the differences between this group of children and seriously, just a generation ago. We are seeing drastic changes in the expectations for our littles that aren't even at the average age of reading readiness, developmentally speaking. So I want us to keep that in mind as we have this discussion that, we're looking at definitely historical setting where we have an unprecedented literacy crisis. This is not news. It's been all over. Well, it is news, but it's not a surprise. I know we've been hearing a lot about that. So it really is understandable that parents are very concerned. I found because of this concern on the part of, very intentional parents and caring parents, that there have been people in the literacy and the educational field that have taken advantage of that a little bit. And I don't like to use the word predatory, but it's been a bit playing into those fears of parents and convincing them that if their child is not reading super young, that they're behind. And that is absolutely not the case. So let's talk about what the research really says and what you can do to help your child not become a statistic. So what does actually look different? It's not just the academic standards that are different. Children are expected to sit longer. They're expected to do tasks that take fine motor skills that, well, they're just not always developed in children age 4, 5, and 6. And, that's a very important consideration. We know that children have a different attention span at this age. We know that children are still developing their muscles in their hands that help them to be successful in the writing task. And my fear is that children are getting the message early on that they're not capable, when maybe it's just that they need the opportunity to develop a little bit more, and they're actually not behind. They're right where they should be developmentally speaking. So I want to speak to that point today. I want to reassure parents that find themselves in this situation where, these high expectations and feeling like their child might not be meeting those. And then I want to encourage you to go ahead and watch some of my other episodes that give you really solid foundational information on how to prepare your child and what to do if you suspect that they do have a learning challenge, because we don't want to ignore the fact that some children might be delayed. And if that's the case, then we do want to address it young. So I'm not saying, oh, we're all okay, we don't have to worry or pay attention. No, we absolutely need to pay attention if there are early signs of learning challenges or delays, developmental or any type of delay. We definitely want to be educated on what those signs are and know what to do. I have a lot of resources where I talk about that. We personally have dealt with developmental and learning delays in our family. And so, I've had to personally be in those trenches as a homeschooling mom. And even before we were in homeschool, I dealt with being in those trenches as a mom advocating for her child, or children. So just know I have tons of resources here that delve into that a little bit more and also help you know when it might be time to take a closer look. Now, I've seen a lot of teachers in social media talking about that they are being asked to teach skills that they never would have expected to have to teach a child who is 5, 6 years old. And, I'm not talking about those surprise skills where you're like, wow, I didn't know I had to actually teach them the difference between a letter and word. I am not talking that. I am talking about higher level thinking skills or, more advanced phonics concepts that maybe are just a little too much for some kids. There are children who are ready for that. And if children are ready for that, even if they're early and ready for that, they should be given that opportunity. Hands down, 100%. My goal for my own children and my students when I was in the classroom was to always meet them where they were at. If they were ahead in an area, I wanted to meet them at that level in that skill and give them that extra boost. And if they were having a challenge in an area, even if they were high in other areas, I wanted to make sure that I met that challenge. So in any case, I want to dive into this a little bit deeper, and I would love to know what your thoughts are. What are you experiencing? If you are a homeschool parent, how are you handling higher expectations? Are you going at your own pace? If you are a parent of a child who is going into kindergarten or who just came out of kindergarten, what are your feelings on this? I am curious to know what my community is experiencing themselves, because that helps me to know what you need from me. So it's not a surprise that teachers are saying they're teaching skills that have never been expected of earlier grade levels, because the data, tomato, but the data actually backs that up. A really powerful study not that long ago, 2015, so we're within that 10-year range, at the University of Virginia found that kindergarten classrooms on average were spending less time on art and music and developing motor skills and social skills, and spending much more time on academic skills. And not just spending time on academic skills, but actually math and reading drills. And here's the really important piece that I want my community to walk away with here, is that long-term, children who are introduced to academic skills before they are developmentally ready do not show long-term gains from this. In fact, we tend to see that they plateau out or even have challenges as they go into 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, because they're missing some of the developmental skills that may have been glossed over in order to focus on academic skills. And so it's not that we can't do both, but I want to caution parents to make sure that they are giving their child the whole basket of eggs. I don't want you to miss that because you're hearing how important phonics are. Phonics are absolutely key and critical, and I know that gets a little controversial when I start to talk about the other developmental areas that are important to reading success, because we are in the middle of a literacy crisis, and we know that education for too long missed the mark by not including phonics and systematic phonics and literacy in the classroom. By far, that is one of the best developments, but we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We do want to make sure that we're paying attention to what science says about the development of children. I mean, we're talking that early academic pressure in kindergarten has even been linked in studies to behavioral challenges, long-term burnout, all sorts of, other implications and consequences. And I don't really think that we've had another generation that's had such high expectations at this level. So we really don't even know the full impact of that. We don't really know how it's going to impact a full generation of kids. But what we do know is that we have substantial data to indicate that this can cause more problems than good. And I'll tell you personally, from having been in the kindergarten classroom, one thing that I saw, and I was in the classroom actually not just kindergarten, K through 3, so kindergarten through 3rd grade over my over 20 years of teaching. And one thing I saw on repeat is there were children that, and children don't develop all at the same time in all areas. We call that asynchronous development. They might be really strong in one area and they might have challenges in other areas. And what I noticed is that, even they were in that developmental norm, as we call it, but they weren't ready to take on the academic task because they still hadn't developed some of those milestones. And quite honestly, they shouldn't have had those milestones mastered yet. But children don't understand that there's developmental milestones. But what they do understand is that they're not able to do a task. And instead of thinking, I'm going to be able to do that in a couple years when I develop that skill, and it's totally normal that I don't have that skill yet. No, they don't understand that. So the messaging for children are very, very adept at picking up on what I call unspoken dialogue. And that means the things that we don't necessarily say, but the messaging is there. We don't have to use our words, our actions, or watching the expectations around them. Those things communicate just fine without our words, right? And so this is my concern, that children as young as 5 are already making up their mind that they're not capable. when in fact, if we give them the chance to meet developmental milestones that they should still be given the chance to meet, if we're going by developmental timeline. So remember, even though phonics are super important, building reading readiness in our children is also about building the ability to sit and attend to a task for 5 to 10 minutes, to be able to analyze text, enjoy text, and phonemic awareness, which is one of the top predictors of long-term reading success. So we don't want to miss those important factors, because we can do those and teach our children phonics at the same time. So what can you do as a parent? The first thing that you can do is really focus on what's developmentally appropriate for milestones. So as far as attending to a task for 5 to 10 minutes, developing those motor skills, and all of those types of skills that we like to build in children as a foundation, really pay attention to what the science says is the average and the developmental norm. And if you have questions about that, I encourage you to talk to your pediatrician about that, or even like an educational psychologist if you have any concerns. The next thing you can do is remember that play is children's work. And there is so much that they learn through play. We can be working on letter sounds and listening for beginning sounds as we play and do word play with children. So play-based is a phenomenal way for children to develop not only that sound and letter awareness, but also building their oral language and understanding expression and all of those things, their vocabulary. Those things are going to be also very important as they build their phonics knowledge. They're going to take that background knowledge and ability, and they're going to blend that together to become a strong and confident reader. As earlier mentioned, phonological awareness and phonemic awareness, which is, again, it's wordplay and being able to hear sounds auditorily. It's really important to engage in that type of activity with your child. 5 minutes a day is super great. And, if you have any questions about how to do that, I have tons of resources. I really encourage you to check out my channel for littles ages 3 to 8, where I do a lot of wordplay and fun, play-based phonics activities that are interactive in full episodes for this age range. And so I'll link that down below in the description and you can check that out. I have a full scope and sequence of lessons that you can use to help your little with their reading development. The next thing I want to encourage you to do is to support your child's emotional and developmental readiness. That's just as important as the academics, because, and this is actually circling back to the research that I did for my doctoral degree, that the affective nature or that emotional connection that children get to learning is by far one of the most influential things when it comes to their experience and their ability to learn the material or to learn to read. So that's why I encourage parents to keep lessons short, to really pay attention to what their child's ready for, what their cues are, because we want it to be a positive experience. And if you've had some bumps along the road, you're not alone. I've had bumps along the road in my learning journey with my own kids. So by far, no one is perfect in this. But that's only a chance for you to step back and reflect, and how we're going to do it a little bit different. Let your child have a little break from it. Let yourself have a break from it. That's okay to do. But again, the affective part of it and the messaging that we give our children is huge. And most importantly, trust your gut as the parent. And, I tell parents this: don't go in thinking, I don't have the background or the education. No, you know your child, and you can seek information from people that have studied this. I've studied these things in depth, but there was so much that I went into, homeschooling and parenting, and that I didn't know. But I knew something was amiss, or I knew that something wasn't right, or I knew that, hey, you know what? We need to do that a little different. That doesn't work for my child. You trust your gut as the parent. And again, that's my kind of my foundational recommendation. Seek answers. Ask your pediatrician for a referral if you think there might be a learning challenge or a delay. There's no shame in that. We are finding out so much about brain science and the development of brains, and there's so much new information out there. It's a really interesting time to be in the world of academics, and it's a really interesting time to be a parent. So don't be afraid to look for resources. I have a lot of information here too, so you can scan through my videos, which I really encourage you to do. So to wrap it all up, you are your child's first teacher. And I want to encourage you not to allow the accelerated pace and the high expectations to prevent you from listening to your child's cues and your child's readiness. Ask for support where you need it. Check into those developmental norms and, learn about child development. But listen to your child's cues. Trust your gut. And I encourage you to subscribe here. Smash the like button if this helped you, and share with another parent that would really benefit from this information. And with that, I'll see you next time when I teach to your super learning strengths, one child and family at a time.